So, this talk's a little different than my usual talks, which are very in depth on Orthodox spirituality, but it's still pretty relevant, and it's definitely going to be some Orthodox theology and psychology. I just gave this talk to my roommate the other day, so I kind of practiced it. It's under the belt, but there's a lot of different themes that I want to tie together here. Um, and I want to start with one of my favorite sources of spiritual allegory, uh, Dragon Ball Z. And specifically, I want to talk about Goku, the main character. And I don't talk a lot about my favorite shows, etc., when I'm doing some kind of recording like this because I hate spoiling things for people. That's its own long video, but even if they're like, "Oh, I don't care," I still don't do it. But Dragon Ball Z is a very long anime series. It's been around a long time, but specifically it's long. So if you haven't seen it already, there's only a really small chance you're gonna watch it. And if you're gonna watch it, maybe don't watch this video because I'm gonna spoil some of the character development. It's a very character driven show, so it's very exciting to develop your experience along with the characters, in my opinion. But it's an anime that is a lot of characters fighting each other and beating each other up. So if that sounds like it's not going to interest you anyways, yeah. But regardless, this isn't like it's super spoilery. It just, in my opinion, it's really good to experience characters in a show that's character driven naturally and not hear people's commentary on where they're gonna go. So the thing about Goku is in the Dragon Ball Z universe, in this classic shonen anime, basically shonen is Saturday morning cartoon anime. So it's not considered like a mature anime, but it's for young boys that want to watch guys go "Ah!" and punch each other in the face. You have all these fighters who are very full of themselves, and that's a very common theme. Two fighters come along, and one of them will be like, "Ha, you're so weak, I knew it." And the other will be like, "Oh, you think you're stronger than me? I'm from planet so and so, and I've been trained by Master blah blah blah." Like it's very big, like ego battle pre-battle. And it seems that the human ego reflected in these moments, it's as if the characters think, and I think this is the case. It's not just that they think it, when they gloat like this and they actually believe they're going to win, the idea is that when they actually win, it'll feel even better because not only did they triumph over their opponent, which makes them feel good, but it's like it multiplies the gratification they get by having this trash talk beforehand. And so these fighters, what they're fighting, usually because they want something. Usually, like if I beat you, then I win the tournament and I win all the money, or my ego is awesome, or like I control this whole planet, or whatever it is. Like they're fighting for something, but especially for that ego gratification. Now the thing is Goku is, and then you have good hero characters, and even they are fighting to accomplish a goal, like that fighting is a means to an end. They fight, to protect the people they love. They fight to protect the planet. They fight to uphold the good in some way, which is really great. There's nothing wrong with that. But Goku's a little above this. When he comes to a fight, he doesn't really care who wins, except on one condition: that they won because they were truly the better fighter. When he comes to a fight, he's genuinely excited in the with this exact opposite mindset of that I always assume I'm better than you. He comes and he's like, "Oh, this is going to be great to see which one of us is the better fighter." And he doesn't want anyone to step in from either side. He wants it to be him and the other person who is supposed to be a great fighter he's heard about. And characters are often shocked and they're like, "No, we need to be able to help you." And sometimes characters do this, like, don't step in because they got to show off how powerful they are. Vegeta, one of the other characters, does this a lot. But Goku, it's what it really comes down to is that Goku truly loves the fight. The art of the fight to him is beautiful. And he sees the beauty in it and he loves that beauty, and his life is dedicated to the beauty of the fight. Now, he will not sacrifice that for people because he knows, as a good hero character does, which we're losing in this postmodern world, but he knows, as a classic good Christ-like hero, he knows that even if something is beautiful, like the art of fighting. He knows that people are the most important. He doesn't know why, because he doesn't know we're made in the image of God. But we still have the creators of Dragon Ball Z have this conscience, and they knew this when people create characters that protecting human lives is the pinnacle. Even in highly woke Marvel films these days, they still know that the protection of human life is incredibly important. We haven't been able to escape this very Trinitarian Christian concept. But Goku lives for the beauty of the fight, and that is a key defining trait of who he is and what makes him stand out to everyone he meets. He even earns the respect of many evil characters and wins them over to the good simply because he has this true, authentic love for that very thing he engages in. And so keep this image in mind, and I'm going to jump from this to this very orthodox Christian idea. The way I put it in my own words is that I like to say love is a kind of single-mindedness. And the philosopher and theologian Soren Kierkegaard, he has a book called Purity of Heart is to Love One Thing. And this theme is very important. It comes in Christianity in multiple layers. The first place that really stood out to me was in Psalm 50, 51, depending on which Bible translation you're using. This is the prayer, in my opinion, the best psalm. We Orthodox love it the most, and pray it the most at least. It's David's prayer of repentance for his sin with Bathsheba. David has sent Bathsheba's husband to the front lines, basically indirectly murdering him, and then he has slept with Bathsheba. So he has committed murder and adultery, and he sinned against both these people. And he goes to God and he says this prayer, which is the psalm, and he goes, one of the lines from it is he says to the Lord, "Against you only have I sinned." Now I remember when I read that and I was like, no, you sinned against Bathsheba and her husband, man. Like, why are you telling God this? But as I've come to reflect on this theme more of this unique way love looks at someone in front of them and loves them as if there's no one else in the world, even though somehow that coexists with love. We try and love multiple people, and God loves us like this. He loves each of us as if we're the only person there is, even though he loves all of us like this. It sounds paradoxical, but it's true. And he makes this point in the Gospels when he says, if you're this one sheep that leaves the 99 other sheep, I'll go away from them and go find you, because you alone are worth it. The Fathers, even C.S. Lewis, having read them, talks about this, that Christ would have been sacrificed on the cross if you were the only person who he was saving. Any one of us he would do that with. That is the divine love of God, and we're trying to have this love. And so one of the ways that God has given us to practice this kind of love is marriage. Marriage is where you pick a person and you say, I'm going to love you like you're the only person in the universe. Now, of course, they try and love other people. Married people go to church and they do acts of service. And of course, they have kids and they have to love these kids. But one of the things if you've worked with marriage counseling as a field is that sometimes you have husband and wives, they have struggles, but they have kids already. And they're like, well, let's try and stay together for the kids. And generally, that just doesn't work. The only way that the marriage is restored is if they actually love each other. And what's interesting is when you see parents who love each other and even prioritize each other over the children, you would think like, well, doesn't that hurt the kids? No, it actually provides them. It's like a husband and wife loving each other unconditionally in a Christian, martyric, like sacrificial way, in a way of being a martyr. The kids thrive under that. They almost absorb the love that happens between the parents in the same way that when we commune with the Trinity, absorb the love that's exchanged between the three members of the Trinity. And the husband and wife is a duinity, as I like to call it, a reflection of that love of the Trinity. And so for the husband and wife to love like that gives life. Not just that a child is born through intercourse, but they give life to each other by sacrificing to each other, and then that love gives life to their existing children in a way. There's something about this that is mystical and divine that when you love like that which is beloved is the only thing in the universe, even though we can love multiple people like this. But it seems very specific that God tells us to pick one person to practice on, and that's why we practice monogamy, picking one person. But this doesn't just apply to relationships and people and marriage. And of course, I'm tying in this theme I was tapping into earlier where Goku loves fighting like this. We see this problem today in film. And specifically, we see this with some of the very bad evangelical Protestant Christian films. I'm very specific evangelicals. I know a lot of evangelicals and a lot of broader kinds of Protestant Christians that do recognize this as a problem. But it's in the world of evangelical Protestantism that this is happening. Films like God's Not Dead and the other films in that series. I watched one of them I watched the first one with my dad. Some people had recommended it to him, and I said, Dad, I do want to watch this with you, but you have to be, are you okay if I make fun of it while we watch it? And he's like, yeah, a little bit of that. And when we were done, he agreed it was a pretty terrible film, and I was glad I had made the most of it by MST3King it, Mystery Science Theater, cracking jokes a little bit during it. The film, it has a plot that is this Christian story of a man being an atheist and arguing with a Christian student and then changing his mind. The problem is that it's not well written. Like, there's a way you write stories that make them feel human. It doesn't have that. It's just like the skeletal, it's like checkboxes. Well, he has to be an atheist. He has to realize he was wrong. He has to have a miraculous experience, and he has to change his mind. But it's not written like the person who wrote it was skilled at portraying the human heart. And the great films, the films by Stanley Kubrick, Martin Scorsese, Steven Spielberg, who does Indiana Jones and Jurassic Park, like these directors that are loved by people who love film, it's because they truly love expressing beauty through the medium. In the same way that Goku loves fighting. They love art itself. They love film itself, and you can tell they're not using it just as a means to an end. They actually love it. Now, it doesn't mean you can't have something also conveyed, like do a beautiful movie that also testifies to Christ. But the truth is because this kind of singular love is a divine attribute, if you want to tell a story of Christ, you have to show that the medium through which you did it, you actually loved that medium. It's a testimony to him that you try to have such a beautiful story through that medium, that you cared so much about it. And the problem is, God's Not Dead doesn't have beautiful music. It doesn't have beautiful writing. It doesn't have beautifully written characters. It doesn't have a masterful story. It's not cinematography that's special. It's just a means to an end. Now, in art as a concept is basically expression. When someone does art, they basically use creation in a way that they express something going on in their heart. And this is part of what it means to be a priest. A priest is a human being by definition. A priest is someone who links what is in their heart spiritually to the physical world. Ideally, humans in the Garden of Eden were linked to God, and so spiritually their nous, their heart communed with him, and then they would go to creation, to plants, to animals, to each other, to all the rocks and the trees and everything, and they would give God's love to it. And when man through sin, evicted God from his heart, and then was himself evicted through the experience of paradise in the Garden of Eden, all of nature and creation cried out because man no longer loves creation, he just uses it. Rather than being in communion with the divine logos, the mind, the designer Christ himself, who knows what is his purpose behind creation, which would give man the ability to connect deeply with creation, man instead is devoid of that. And the only thing he has to inspire him is his passions, his desires, his cravings. So a man who is like this looks at a woman and he objectifies her because the only thing he sees is she can sexually gratify me, or she can tell me I'm awesome or fill my ego. He just sees her as an object. He drains all of in his vision, he drains all that God has intended for her to be out of who she is, and there's just an object. And we don't just do this with, it's not just men looking at women, that's a classic example. We do this with everything. We only see in a lot of what God has created what we can get out of it to fill our own cravings. But as we recommune with Christ, we not only know how he intended for all of these things around us to be, we actually, it's like if you had a friend who invented some device and you don't know him well and you just look at the device, you might not know what the device does. But as he tells you, oh, well, I designed it to process this and do this and blah blah blah, well, now because you're his friend and you've listened to his heart and you know him, you look at the device and you're like, oh, I know exactly what someone like him would intend for that. Well, everything in creation is this device, is this beautiful design of Christ. He is the mind, the logos behind it, and knows all its intentions. So as you know him, you know how it's to be used. But also, on a spiritual level, you actually carry him as a temple in your heart the more you return to him and bond with him. And so we're meant to take what is in ourselves spiritually and bond it with creation. Even in therapy, we're craving this. We're craving all this storm of us going inside that's nebulous. We're craving to put it in the physical reality of words. We're craving to take what is in us and put it in words. And as we do that, and not only that twofold purpose, we connect with another human being over it. So now we have relationship. We feel very fulfilled and we feel it's been processed. When we hear a song, we've been feeling something, we don't know how to put it into words, and we hear a song that puts it into words, or even feels like it does. Some songs are just kind of made up lyrics that don't actually mean something, but it'll be close enough. We feel suddenly this spiritual reality is made manifest in the world. This is what we're designed to do. And it's part of why Gnosticism, this early group that the Gnostics, that the early Christians fought, they said the physical world was bad and the spiritual was good. The Christians fought them because they're like, no, these are both from God and they're meant to be unified. And so man, our natural impulse is to do this bridging of the spiritual and physical. And even when a saint becomes holy, their bones and their body, even after they pass, after they repose, their body still has holiness in it. It still works miracles, not because of like some sort of witchcraft thing, but because God is truly connected in this spiritual way to the physical. And this is our job, is our own bodies to make them temples of the Holy Spirit. And even after we die, they stay temples in some way. But to make all things we connect to full of spiritual reality and full of Christ. And so all these layers, we're taking what is in us as priests and manifesting it into reality. And this is what art is supposed to be. It's supposed to be this manifesting. Even wicked people are priests, but they infuse the evil in them. When we sin, we infuse an evil into physical objects. This is the purification that's going on in the Old Testament. People think of it like it's all got to be related to deaths of some kind, but that's not accurate, and that's not the way the Old Testament speaks of it. When the sprinkling of blood happens, it's ontological. It's some real kind of cleansing. Sin breaks things in a real way, in a way we can't even fully observe as human beings, but God knows is there and needs addressed. And the sprinkling of blood cleans it. Well, now Christ's blood cleans the brokenness of this sin. And so on every layer, man is infusing spiritual realities, good and bad, into the universe. And we can definitely create evil art that pushes man towards evil. But what is our job as humans is whatever we are doing to be bridging the spiritual realities going on in us with the physical reality. So when we make art, we are doing this fundamental thing. And when we sin, we're usually doing some kind of objectification. But as one of my artist friends long ago explained to me, a good word for the inversion of this art to objectification is actually propaganda. Because we know propaganda is a political term, someone creating art like a poster that's artistic, but it's meant to make you feel and convey something political. It's not meant to actually be beautiful. It's meant to manipulate you, to make you feel a certain way according to what the creator wants you to feel. So again, the art is not about the beauty of the creation itself and the beauty linked of the heart and the physical world. It's about a means to an end. And going all the way back, this is what we see with the other fighters that are opposing Goku a lot of the time, that are in the Dragon Ball Z series, is that fighting is just a means to an end to make them feel puffed up about themselves, or for them to take over a planet, or even the good guys. And this isn't, again, not necessarily bad, but you can tell when the fighting isn't something that they're doing out of love for the creation, as I would insert into Dragon Ball Z. They're doing it because they have to save someone, and sometimes they die in the process. But there's something about how Goku lives that is actually the natural path for him to become a good fighter. And then when he loves his friends and he loves fighting, they pair well together, that he is a competent fighter who can defend his friends and who can bring justice, not by punishing an evildoer, but true Orthodox Christian justice, which is what God does, which is to actually heal the universe. He converts evil men to good. He doesn't just punish them, he actually heals the universe a bit through his love. So this is what we all need to be, is to be people who, whatever we do it truly loving what we're doing. And if we can't love it like that, if we can't love it with Christian love, not just people, but an action or an art, we might need to question whether it's actually something we should be doing. Maybe it's something sinful, and that's why we can't seem to make it all fit together like that. What's funny is I'm critical of a lot of the social justice extremism that you seem to see today. I see that there's certain social justice, meaning wanting society to be rightly ordered, to be just, to see people treated well. There's some of it that's very true, and there's some of it that is just extremes used for political purposes. It's weaponized, and it's actually counterproductive to some of the truths that are out there of people experiencing injustices. But we even see this now with an example. I'll give an example of what I'm getting at here. There are good ways to do artistic things that portray people being abused and experiencing injustice, and they're usually done by doing it beautifully. An example of this is Mad Max Fury Road, the, I guess, fourth Mad Max movie that came out several years back, a reboot of the 80s series, apocalyptic film series. There's a lot going on in this film, but basically Mad Max, the main character, saves some women from this like apocalyptic city in the middle of the desert and escape in a vehicle. This apocalyptic vehicle with spears and metal armor and stuff. And it's the future, the apocalypse, whatever. And so they go off chasing after them, and all these vehicles swarm their vehicle, and they have this battle that ensues. Very, very cool film, done very, very well. It's not everybody's cup of tea. It's rated R, lots of action, violence, but it is a very beautifully done film. And a lot of people who were more conservative, don't like feminism, etc., didn't realize it was a feminist film. How is it a feminist film? Well, at the core, feminism is about women being mistreated. There's some truth to that. Stuff that you could quote right out of the Bible, that if you're going to use the term feminism, would the Venn diagram would overlap. Even if you don't like feminism, and I would say there's a bunch of things to criticize about feminism, there's absolutely some truths to it. You don't have to use the term or like it or whatever, but it's not helping anyone to say there's not truth to it, because there are. And they are Christian truths. There are things that are truths, that are fundamental, that are in the Bible, that are in our Orthodox saints, etc. And this movie conveys them beautifully, which is why people didn't realize it's an intentionally feminist film. What is this feminist message that's in it? It's that if your society mistreats women, your society will be awful. That's the message that is a major driving part of the film. They objectify women, they mistreat them, they do not treat them how God says to treat them, even though that's not the intention of the film. I'm explaining why they have a Christian truth, is because God did not intend women to be treated this way, and it makes an awful society. Because this film is beautiful, you basically ended up with a feminist film wanting to portray the feminist messages that many conservatives saw and were like, this movie's awesome, I love it. And you basically were able to convey the message you wanted to convey because you made a beautiful movie. Another example of this is the horror film Get Out. It's a film that's about racism, and racism is part of what is so horrifying. This is a classic part of horror movies, is to take something in society and make it able to be a monster in a film. The movie Alien was actually inspired by rape. Like they were trying to make rape a monster that could scare anyone, that it invades your body. And yeah, anyways, I don't need to go much more detail than that. But many of these horror films are taking an idea from society and making it into a monster. And Get Out is that with racism. But because it is not preachy, the same exact problem with God's Not Dead, it's actually a good, scary film. Many conservatives were down to digest this anti-racism horror film. People who are turned off by Black Lives Matter films and whatnot. And so the point I'm getting at is that you can convey these messages you want to convey simply by doing something that is truly beautiful. And I think as Christians and as Orthodox Christians, and whatever your worldviews are you think are so important, if you want to convey them in a way that reaches people that are not just the insiders that already agree with you, you need to love them. You need to love the medium by which you convey things. You need to do whatever you do as unto the Lord, which, if loving things singularly like that with a focus on them is a divine attribute, which is how God loves us, then that's part of doing everything as unto the Lord, like Scripture commands. And the thing with God's Not Dead, that film, th- there are not a bunch of atheists that converted because of it. It was very popular, but it was just popular with mainline evangelicals. Like it wasn't converting anyone. It was well, there's a very crass term, circle. Yeah, if you know it, you know it. I'm trying to think of a better one, but basically, it was just a self gratifying thing, but it didn't win people over. But when people do something that is beautiful, that is sacrificial, that reflects Christian love, not only for people but for the art form that's being used, it converts many. And bringing it full circle, that's why I love Goku. And if you watch for it, you'll see it. You'll see that the people who create truly beautiful music, that the people who create truly beautiful symphonies, like Arvo Part, he is an Orthodox composer. He makes truly beautiful orchestral music, and he's an Orthodox Christian composer. And people hear the music and they want to know about his faith because beauty reveals God. The love of beauty shows that someone has some desire for that which is beautiful. And all beauty is from Christ. Christ is the author of beauty. Beauty comes from his mind. He, as the Logos, is the measure of all beauty. So if we truly want to reflect Christ, beauty has to be a priority for us. Our churches have to be beautiful. Our icons have to be beautiful. Our hearts have to be beautiful. And of course, he defines beauty. And one of the problems we run into too while I'm talking about this is we think beautiful means it's going to make me emotional. That's not it. Beautiful means according to the heart of Christ. Sometimes beautiful things don't make you emotional. Sometimes beauty and simplicity are paired together. But beauty is rooted in Christ, and we know it is beautiful the more we know him, and the world will be won over by beauty if we truly want to live for it. But sadly, most of the time, we just want to take a medium, chew it up, get the parts out that are useful to us, and spit out the rest. And all this beauty that Christ intended for this medium, we spit it out because we don't see it as useful to us. And sometimes it's a form of sloth and laziness. Sometimes it's pride. I was just listening to Jonathan Pageau talk about acedia, which is basically sloth, but it's to not give full attention to something. And so acedia, like we think sloth is like, I'm lazy, I want to sit around. Well, that's part of it, but that's like a subcategory of it. But Pageau notes in his little 5-minute video on acedia that a busybody is a form of acedia because they can't stop and focus on the thing they're doing and give it their full attention and full love. They move from thing to thing to thing and just about checking boxes. But love pauses and takes in fully that which is being engaged with. So an Orthodox therapist has to be fully present with the person they are with, attuned to them. That's a very key psychology and specifically counseling term, is attune, that you really are on the same page and hearing and understanding what the client is saying. You're not hearing something like oh man, they said this, and I know the exact response to that. When I say this, they're gonna like me so much, they're gonna probably want to give me extra money or come back. Like, boom, that's not attunement. I'm they're a means to an end. We have to love each thing for its own end, and we have to, and it's a cross to fight acedia, to fight this lack of giving our full attention. Just it's just as useful as it is to me. Move on to the next thing. Check the box. We have to fight this. We have to fight this in our prayer corner when we want to just be like, okay, pray the prayer rule as fast as possible, and then I can get to like arguing on Twitter again. Oh, that's not a personal reference at all. But yeah, like we all have this battle with acedia. We all have this battle to engage with God or people or creation and just get through it and get on to the next thing. Or how can this be useful to me? And then I'm done with it. To actually go as a discipline in everything in life. Okay, this is in front of me. God has put, like this train in front of me. I'm stopped here at a stoplight and there's a train in front of me. I'm not going to be somewhere else or be lamenting, oh, I'm going to be late, blah, blah, blah. What can I do right here that is fully present in this little situation because God is sovereign and he's allowed this? It might be that you pray the Jesus prayer. It might be that, if you think it's appropriate, you pull out your phone while you're waiting at a train, you text someone that you love them, that you've been fighting with. Whatever it is, you become present in your world. You fight acedia, you fight this desire to just fast forward through things and think about something else or move on or be irritated you can't fast forward. You choose in every moment to be present. And presence is a habit. This is a habit that cell phones, video games, and television are destroying. Now, I'm a bit of a gamer, and I kind of like that I game a little bit so I can throw gaming under the bus without people feeling totally dismissed, because I play some games once in a while, and I do like certain films. I watch less comedy now because comedy is kind of a junk food for me. But I try and watch shows that get my brain going. I really like shows like Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, which is a spin-off. The first season of True Detective, for anyone that's seen that. These are shows that are deeply character driven and they get my brain going. I sometimes watch serial killer documentaries because they get my brain going about why we're so evil as human beings and why we disconnect from God and why I do what I do. And I see these characters breaking down, turning evil or turning good and being heroic. And I go, that's who Christ is, and that's who, like, he wants us to be like Goku, in that way that he loves everything he does, and he doesn't want us to be like Walter White, who justifies himself. Well, I'm doing this, I'm making crystal meth for my family, and then when the path diverges and it's family or crystal meth, he always chooses himself, and he always chooses crystal meth, and he always says, I'm Heisenberg, say my name, like it's about my ego. Like, I love these kinds of shows. So that said, what's going on with us is that our mind is meant to be very focused like this, and all the technology we have is gratifying where our mind goes, this isn't pleasing me, I'm going to go over here. We should stick to a thing. We should focus on it no matter if it's pleasing us or not. That's this love. We should focus on a person even if we want to text while they're talking. No, put the phone down. Focus on the person that God has placed in front of you. I'm lecturing myself right now too. But that's how we need to live. We need to live this way, and we need to recognize that even though we might be able to, by God's mercy, use our cell phones once in a while, be on social media once in a while, play some games, watch a show once in a while, we need to realize that these things, if we engage in them too much, they are designed to take us over. And they do this by gratifying the acedia, by gratifying the part of us that goes, this isn't pleasing me, I want to go over here. You look at Twitter, you see a tweet, it doesn't immediately gratify you. Next tweet, it doesn't gratify me. Next tweet, just scroll, scroll, scroll. People even make this joke now about Netflix. It's that you sometimes just sit there and you're getting just like this dopamine from the theoreticals of what you could watch, but you never watch anything. It used to be that we at least had to do a ritual for our lazy film watching, where we had to walk to the family library or go to the actual library or rent Blockbuster or something, look through things, talk with our friends, pick out something, come back, stick it in the DVD player, make sure we finished it because we got to return it in 2 days. Like, it was very formal. And now we can just plop back, scroll, turn it on. 2 minutes in, this isn't gratifying me, switch to something else. Like, it's as funny as it sounds, that's spiritually bad for us. If you're gonna start a movie, finish it. Like, there's exceptions, yeah, but like as a practice, finish the things you start. And what we have now is not just social media, it's getting worse, it's reels. And they're not doing it, I think, to destroy us necessarily. They might be doing that, who knows? Like, there's CIA connections, whatever, if you want to go down that rabbit trail. But even just it's profit. It's the dark side of capitalism. Free market's good, but there's a dark side, abuse of the free market. That they're realizing we'll use these products more and we don't leave them if they give us these little reels, these short videos. This is so funny. The cat spins around in a circle. Like, creepers in Minecraft. Like, it's doing the same thing that pornography does. We know pornography does this to the brain. It's hyper gratifying, and then people can't be satisfied by regular sexuality anymore. We also can't be satisfied by what's regular entertainment. We have to have gratification, 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 and it's training our brains to get worse. Do you know what the opposite of this is? Like, if you wanted a practice that's the opposite of this, it is the type of meditation that one does when they do the Orthodox Jesus prayer. Now, the Buddhists and these Eastern religions, they have a lot of kinds of meditation, but one of the main ones, and it is good and scientific, you already have the Jesus prayer, so you could just do it that way, is what they'll do is they'll, like, you might hear of someone saying, like, notice your breath. Like, you're focused or you're distracted or whatever, but they say, like, breathe and just notice your breath. What you're actually doing is taking that part of your mind that wanders, which is actually the nous in the Fathers. It's the focus of the heart. It's the heart. They use it a few different ways, but one of the ways they use it is the focus of the heart. And you're picking something and you're placing it fully on that thing. You can see the threads tied together here of the focusing on one thing and staying focused on it. And as your mind thoughts wander, nope, bring it back to your breath. And you just stay on the noticing your breath, how it feels, how it sounds as one thing. And that actually is like push-ups for your focus and for your brain. But the thing is we can do this with the Jesus prayer. We take our nous and our heart in this focus of it, and we not only are focusing on one thing, this prayer, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. But we're actually, as that space is being cleaned out, all those distractions, and we're just focused on that prayer, we're actually inviting Christ to come into our heart and be the thing we're focused on. So we get a twofold benefit. We get this psychological benefit when we do the Jesus prayer. We're actually undoing the damage that cell phones and video games and television can do to us. We're actually undoing that. And we're bonding with Christ, and there's nothing better than that. There's nothing. So if anything, we need to be doing the Jesus prayer. If we want to be full circle here, if we want to be like Goku, and in the fullest, deepest, most Christ-like way we can be, we need to pray the Jesus prayer. But we also, it's not just about adding in Christ. You can't serve two masters. We do need to be mindful about what we're consuming, how it affects us, how much we're consuming, because sometimes there's things you can do a little bit and it's healthy, but you got to be mindful how much. But there's some apps we need to just delete entirely. But we need to be really mindful about how these things are affecting us, because it's purposefully intended to groom our minds according to certain patterns. And the Orthodox Church has always been the antidote long before this existed. We have simple icons. They're not meant to gratify us and give us lots of warm fuzzies that capture our attention. We actually have to look at the icon and think about it and what's in it. That's why they're so simple, instead of the really passionate naturalistic art that popped up in Catholicism after the schism. After you've got the 5 apostolic churches, Rome, Constantinople, Alexandria, Jerusalem, and Antioch, and other smaller churches. Rome says, we're the boss of you guys, and the other ones say, no, we're all equal. And Rome parts in 1054 and becomes Roman Catholicism. The other 4 churches, and a lot of the ones under them, stay together. That's the Eastern Orthodox churches of today. When Rome breaks off, they lose the bond that corrects itself. These churches, when one of them does something wrong, the other ones all come together and correct each other as a family. Rome goes off. There's no system like that anymore. The Pope just does what he wants. And immediately the Pope starts saying, the Papus Dictae, one of the popes writes this document. I'm infallible. I can depose bishops. I can depose any emperor. Like all this crazy stuff that Rome doesn't agree with, but that's what the popes have been doing. And there's no checks and balances unless they have a council, which just points back to why Orthodoxy actually preserved the right model of the church. That's what the early church was doing, is according to both histories. But anyways, Rome, one of their many things they started changing after 1054 was they started making the art to be really emotionally stirring and stimulating. And what the fathers would have said is, like, you're cluttering up your heart and your nous. You're actually supposed to take these moments where you press everything aside, which is what icons, simple liturgical worship, the Jesus prayer helps do, and make room for Christ as a person to come in of his own free will. You can't make him come in, which is what some of the charismatics Protestants sometimes do, is like, oh, I can just sing the song and it makes me feel things. That's the Holy Spirit. Now, if that's not how relationships work. You can't command a person to come into your heart. You prepare yourself and you invite him, and he appears as he pleases. He is a person. And it wouldn't be good for you for him to be just a genie available on command. He's not your slave. You're his wife. You're his bride. You're supposed to do what he says. He's the bridegroom. You're supposed to be concerned with his feelings, doing what he says, doing things you don't want to do for him. That's what real Christian worship should look like. It should be a bunch of things that God revealed, which is what it originally was. God revealed it wasn't fun, it wasn't exciting, but it was very good for you. And so we benefit in the Orthodox Church from having preserved this spiritually guided by true apostolic spirituality, these spiritually guided traditions that keep our mind simple and focused, that keep us from acedia, from these distractions, that make us like Goku, that help us be martyrs for our spouse, like I was talking about earlier, which is part of what marriage is, giving life to each other. Orthodoxy says marriage is martyrdom. It's not an agreement, a contract you make with each other where you put the slave rings on, which is what those originally were. That we have those, we use the rings, that's totally fine. But we put crowns of martyrdom on the husband and wife's head because you're a sacrifice to each other. Just like the bishop has a crown that says he's a sacrifice for the whole church, all of his parishes under him. The husband and wife are sacrifices. So the Orthodox Church is full of all these things that are meant to heal us and to guide us away from acedia, away from this distractedness and this abusing and objectification of creation, and towards this single-minded lovingness where every person, and God especially, we say, like David said, against you only have I sinned. We wrong 5 people, and each one of them we're like, against you only have I sinned. It feels that way to us because that's how singularly we focus. We're not distracted like those dumb reels on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and whatever. We are focused on them. And so we need to ask God for this. We need to seek this. And we need to, whatever we do, love with this kind of love. Love as unto the Lord. Love as if each person we meet is the one sheep. And I'll end with this. Years ago, when I was in Bible college, I was one of those people that was talking about the kinds of stuff I talk about now. I don't think it was as good back then because I was making it up myself. But people were like, oh, you have some cool insights and whatever. I think my insights are deeper now just because that's what the effect of the fathers are. Like the church fathers teach you this incredible stuff. And it blew me out of the water, any dumb things I had to say. A lot of dumb things now, but thankfully I have them to quote to make me sound smart, the church, the saints and stuff. But I thought I would write all these books, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna write books on psychology and relationships and whatever. And when I came to Orthodoxy, I realized that I had an idolatrous attachment. I thought too much of myself, and it was just unhealthy. Even if I wasn't thinking highly of myself, I was still attached to the idea. And I realized I had to actually take a break, fast from psychology, and just take a break from it. And I told the Lord, if you want me to be in psychology, you bring it back. And by the Lord's mercy, my family, my friends, my priest were all like, you need to be a therapist. And I was like, I don't have a master's in counseling. And they're like, just make business cards, make a website, tell people you're a therapist. People will pay and they will like it. And I did that, and it's gone well the last several years as I've done this by the Lord's mercy, very much so. But the key one of the key experiences I had was realizing I thought that, if I loved God and I had this gift, that the most important thing was to help as many people as possible. That's why I thought that was part of why I wanted to write all these books. Was like, if I do have these talents, I need to not bury them. I need to multiply them and blah 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 as much as possible, which is sound logic. But the thing is when you looked at my heart, it was filthy. And it was me trying to fix people. I wasn't trusting God to fix them or treating it like this knowledge came from him. I thought of it that way, but I still was treating it in my actual behaviors. They didn't line up what my mind was saying. And so it was misguiding my heart. And I realized that if I was truly going to practice love, I had to be willing to invest all that time and energy if it was just one person. And that was how my psychotherapy practice started off. It was just a handful of people, and I just had to be like, if I can't make videos and I can't write books and I can't do all this stuff, and I just literally spend my weeks helping like 3 or 4 people, are they worth it to me? Is Christ would leave for 1 sheep, or 4 sheep worth it to me, or am I better than Christ? Do I have a higher bar than God himself has? And that was really convicting. I realized that I was seeing the numbers game as what really mattered. And the truth is it was making me the savior of people, not God. The truth is everyone we meet, God is working on them. You might, by God's mercy, I might, by God's mercy, be blessed to participate in that, in one little step of a long series of dominoes God has had from their birth to their death, and even extending before and after with Christ's work and the end, the resurrection and everything. You get to be one, maybe 5 dominoes out of a near infinite number. Like, that's it. And so if you think like, oh my gosh, I'm the one who's going to put these super key dominoes. No, no. Christ didn't need anyone's help to convert Saul to Paul. He showed up himself. He doesn't need our help to convert anyone. He could be spreading the gospel. He could be here present physically, and he could be spreading the gospel to every single person. But he is a family God. He is a Trinitarian God. He is a God who loves his children. And when his children get to help him with his project, being the father that he is, he loves that. He's not jealous in that way. He's jealous in the way that he wants to be with us, but he's not jealous like an egotistical person who's like, hey, those saints are stealing my job. He loves that. He loves to send his messengers and his prophets and his kings and his priests. That's beautiful to him. That's why the saints exist. So it's so important that no matter what we do, we're just focused on how to do it right before the Lord, which is what I'm talking about here. Is we have to do right before the Lord. It's not about, what's the most, well, if we do the movie this way, that'll get the most people to Christianity. It's like, if you do the movie as if it was a movie offered to the Lord, as if you were gonna go, hey Lord, I want you to see this movie I made, you'd make it as beautiful as possible. I hope I would too. I might not, but that's really the way that we should be going about this. That's really the way we should go about everything. It doesn't matter what God puts in our path. He's sovereign. He's ordained everything. Even our falls he allows. He doesn't cause us to fall. We chose that, but he allows them whenever they happen. They've been part of his plan. So it's much more about viewing these things in the light of his sovereignty, and then acting in those moments as if we're making a beautiful sacrifice to him. If we're creating art, making it as beautiful as possible, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Yeah. So be like Goku. Whatever you do, love it with all your heart. And love your friends like Goku does with all your heart. And be ready to sacrifice everything for them. Because that's what Christ would do. And if you haven't seen Dragon Ball Z, start with Dragon Ball Episode 1. Don't skip to Z like some people goofily tell you. I pray for them, and please pray for them. They need prayer. But, start with Dragon Ball. You might actually like it. I thought I would hate it when I watched it, but it's actually really fun, really exciting. The characters get you really motivated. And Goku is a wonderful, of all the many, many stories I've engaged with, Goku is very much a really awesome Christ figure in some dumb animated little series from Japan, designed for 13-year-old boys. So yeah, I did not expect to like Dragon Ball Z as much as I did when I watched it at like 26 years old. But it's actually really good. Dragon Ball Z. That's the gist of it. There's some other spin-off stuff, but that's what you'd actually want to watch. And you can skip the filler episodes too. Google that, look it up. It'll tell you. So, anyways, uh, it's Holy Week. I hope you have a blessed Holy Week. And if you appreciate any of the work I do in this channel, I do have Venmo and PayPal, and I do have Patreon, and it is a wonderful blessing to get a little bit of assistance in paying the bills, feeding myself, and creating content that hopefully helps people, hopefully stimulates them a little bit. I mean, there's a ton of other content producers out there. I'm nobody, but I hope, yeah, I hope this video has blessed you. So, and if you want to talk to me about whatever, feel free to message me, especially if you want to talk about just stuff you're going through in your life. If you want to come formally as some kind of client, I have had a couple people now consult me for art projects. That's been really interesting. So I kind of do whatever. I just talk to people. But if you're not sure, you're welcome to just message me and ask me questions and not pay me too. I just like talking with people about this stuff. Obviously, I just do it to make videos for free, whatever. Yeah. And last of all, pray for me. And share this video with anyone you think would enjoy it. So, God bless. Blessed Holy Week. Stay strong. I look forward to proclaiming with you soon, Christ is risen.